persecution is coming, why would you give them a message of comfort and not comfort them with it? You know, why is it not written to them? So that's a big problem. If this method is true, what good did the book do for them, for the first century Christians to whom it was written? It's like writing a book of comfort and giving it to somebody. Hey, this is for, you know, your great grandchildren, not for you. Another is the continual history method. This method makes the Catholic Church the central theme of the book, which is a serious oversight, I think. What good would it have done the first century Christians? We have the same problem. What good would it have done the first century Christians if you're writing about a denomination that doesn't even come into existence for another 2 centuries? Right. Then there's the philosophy of history method. This view has the events in the book occurring over and over again. I think Darren and I were talking about this earlier. He referred to it as the parallelist. My notes say the philosophy of history method, but basically the events just keep happening over and over again. And very broadly, generically speaking, you could say something like that. History does seem to repeat itself, right? But what's the problem here with this book and interpreting it that way? Look how specific it is. I mean, look how specific the prophecies are in this book. Yes, they're written in figurative language, apocalyptic language, but they're still very specific. So there's a big problem there. The preterist method, this method has all of the book fulfilled in the Roman Empire. And then there's the historical method. This method emphasizes that the book of Revelation was written to the people of John's day, but still has some meaning for us today. While the prophecies are fulfilled during John's day, there's still some, just like I said before, remember in the book of Genesis, what did God promise Abraham? Yeah, you're going to be blessed, and that and some of those prophecies even begin to be fulfilled with the law of Moses coming into effect. Because here now we have Mount Sinai, we have law of Moses, and God's people are being led along. Is there not something we can learn from the law of Moses? Certainly. So prophecy fulfilled already, there's still some principles that we can learn from them. And one of the major principles we learn from the book of Revelation, though it be already fulfilled, is victory, comfort, and how to get through severe persecutions and things of this nature. But it allows us to see the author, the date, and to whom it was written, and still gain much from it. Okay, so background facts that we've already talked about. Revelation 1:1, John refers to himself as the author here. It was written to the 7 churches of Asia. It's written for comfort and relief that is coming. And then we have various dates. Now I want to introduce to you some a third date. Yes, sir?
There is one other group, and you may have mentioned it while I was trying to get the sound to work, but and most of your denominational friends believe this, is that there's a good portion of Revelation that has not been fulfilled.
Right.
It's still to come.
And that, I think premillennialist would fall into the futurist method, which was the very first one that I mentioned. And maybe they could be a subcategory of this, looking for these passages to be fulfilled. I've turned to stations, religious stations on cable television in the past where they had the news going, and they were going through all of the things that were happening in the Middle East and all over the world, and they were connecting prophecies from the book of Revelation, from Daniel, from Ezekiel. And so anything that was happening, whether it was war, famine, or natural disasters, whatever it was, they would find a passage in the Bible and connect it to it. And the thing is, they might use the same passage this week or next week on something different. And so over and over again, using these passages to say, oh, we're getting closer to these prophecies being fulfilled. And so...
Not to mention how many times in history has there not been war, famine?
Yeah, how many times in history have there not been war, famine, pestilence, natural disasters? That's
God says they're always going to be.
and that's right. They're always going to be. Okay, I'm going to move over here because I want to write a few things, and I hope you can see them. You may not be able to see them. It's just hard to not block that screen, and then I should have just put them up there, but last minute here. All right, so let's turn in our Bibles to Revelation 17. I'm already breaking my initial statement that I wasn't going to jump around the book, but we've got to set the date here. Once we start the book, we won't jump around too much. Let's put it that way. Revelation 17, and this is just the third date I wanted to share with you. Now, this date Revelation 17, verse 9. Verse 7. This date sees the writing as earlier. The vision is given somewhere around 69 to 79, somewhere in there. But that the fulfillment of it is the reign of Domitian. Okay? So look at chapter 17, verse 7. But the angel said to me, why do you marvel? I will tell you the mystery of the woman and of the beast with the 7 heads and the 10 horns that carries her. The beast that you saw was and is not and is about to rise from the bottomless pit to go to destruction. Okay, so was, and then what? Is not. I want to get the right wording here. Yeah. And then third is about to come. Now, I realize that is at least the first time I read that, I was very confused. Was, is not, is about to come. It's quite confusing. But let's read through this passage again. Let's start with the middle of verse 7. Why do you marvel? I will tell you the mystery of the woman and of the beast and the 7 heads, the 10 horns that carries her. Isn't it comforting, too, that while there's prophecy given in the book that is seemingly difficult to understand, there are occasions in the book where John is given the interpretation, or at least some... Hey, no way, class is almost over. No. It really is. What happened?
That's was or is
Yes. I don't know either. Okay, let's keep reading. Okay, so verse 8. The beast that you saw was and is not and is about to rise from the bottomless pit and go to destruction. And the dwellers of the earth whose names have not been written in the book of life from the foundation of the world will marvel to see the beast, because it was and is not and is to come. This calls for a mind with wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman is seated. Now, anyone knows much about Rome? Where was Rome situated? On 7 hills. Okay, so this is a reference to Rome here. These 7 mountains. They are also 7 kings, 5 of whom have fallen. One is, the other has not yet come, and while he does come, or when he does come, he must remain only a little while. And as for the beast that was and is not, it is an 8th, but it belongs to the 7th, and it goes to destruction. Okay, so it's a little confusing, but let's see if we can make some sense of it. Since we're so short on time right now, I'll probably begin with a diagram of this next week. But first, there are how many kings mentioned? He says 5 kings. Well, there's 7, right? But 5 are fallen. 7 kings, but 5 are fallen. All right? So, some people begin with Julius Caesar, but Julius Caesar actually put himself on the throne. He against the Senate. Encyclopedias all agree Julius Caesar was not the first king or emperor of Rome. Augustus was. So we begin with Augustus Caesar. And who is next? Tiberius. Tiberius. Then Caligula. Claudius. And then Nero. All right, you have your 5 that are fallen. And this is where after Nero, remember the 3 horns that were plucked up in the book of Daniel, those 3, I can't recall their names now. Galba, Otho, and Vitellius. They're not even mentioned here in Revelation's prophecy, in John's prophecy. But the one who was, remember was, these 3 are done, was, who was that persecution on the Christians initially? Who was the great force, the great evil against Christianity? Nero, right? Was, right? Then the next is, let's go back to our passage here and read it verbatim. Verse. I'm sorry, I thought I had time to do this. Verse 8. Because it was and is not and is to come. Was, and then we have is not. I don't have time to explain this. I'm sorry. We have Vespasian is the one who is to come, or is at that time, because he's going to be the one that's ruling. And then the one to come is going to be Titus. Or Domitian. Titus is the one who he talks about as going to rule for a little time, because Titus actually only rules for a couple of years. All right? So we'll talk about that some more. Not too much. We're going to get into the book next week. Chapter 1, verse 1 moving on into the book. And for those who I guess I didn't wasn't clear on the questions that I handed out last week, there are some more handouts on the table, but those questions are for chapter 1 of Revelation. And they're not meant to be filled out ahead of time. They're just meant for you to be able to read those and prepare yourself